So that was pretty cool for me because I could picture as the banner was going up and he's standing on center ice, and I'm saying to myself, I was Daryl Sittler on the street, right? Growing up. I had the Canadian stick with the high top on the end and taped a certain way, and I thought I was Daryl. I didn't think I was, but I pretended to be, as we all did, Daryl Sittler. So that was pretty cool.
Sports. Thrilling, exciting, edge-of-your-seat entertainment. Crushing blows, the greatest of heights, and the lowest of lows. Sports are an unbreakable pillar in humanity's existence. They bring people from across the globe together. And yet, are they even important? Well, for your health? Yeah, undeniably. Staying active is good for you, and studies show that participation can be good for the mental well-being of youth. And there are many studies that say even being a fan is good for your health. But what about sports broadcasters, like David Lanys, the subject of today's story? David takes sports broadcasting to another level. Not only was he one professionally, but now he runs the College of Sports Media in Toronto, which graduates the newest industry leaders every year. But see, sports are, at the end of the day, just entertainment, like watching a movie. The results of individual games or player stats do not move the needle when it comes to social issues or real life or death moments. So, sports broadcasters, in front of the camera or behind the scenes, we fans really appreciate the work you do, but whether you broadcast my favorite team winning or losing, maybe beyond 5 minutes of emotions, it doesn't significantly impact my life. So what makes somebody dedicate their life to talking about sports? Do you need to be obsessed? A little selfish and care about literally nothing else? Or could there be more of a fulfilling importance to it? This is the meaning of life to a sports broadcaster.
Sports fills a hole that news cannot. Sports provides the ability for an individual or a group of individuals to escape, to get away. And that's really, really important, especially when people are suffering from a mental health capacity. Having that ability to get away, to escape. I know a ton of people who were watching games with buddies over Zoom, right? Cheering, having a beer, right? By themselves. If they didn't have that, that would be a really, really difficult thing. It would have made what is a difficult situation with COVID even harder. But to have that ability to just get away and break free for a couple hours, boy oh boy does that create such a opportunity for health, overall health.
David says that he grew up in a sports family. He had two brothers, one that was a Division I tennis player. And as much as David was a fan of sports, he says he wasn't obsessed. His first goal was to get into law, which he did.
You know, looking back on it, Kyle, probably the expectations of growing up in a house where, you know, you have Jewish parents and they want you to become a lawyer or a doctor, and you're set in that mindset to a certain extent. When you're growing up, and it's not necessarily forced. It's just you've got cousins who are lawyers and doctors and dentists and professional, and I figured it would make sense to do that. And I looking back on it, probably the thought process was more to probably please my parents than it was to make myself happy as an individual and a human being.
David says he knew that law wasn't for him. He says that he was fortunate that his parents supported anything he wanted to do, which gave him the confidence to switch it up, get into broadcasting. He volunteered at a local radio station and fell in love with the day-to-day, minute-to-minute pressure that it comes with. He says the energy of the people was captivating, so he forced himself into the industry, but he doesn't describe himself as a go-getter per se.
I don't really feel that way. I just feel that when you're going to try something new and you have never done it before, do your research and do your due diligence to try and at least give yourself a educated opinion to whether or not you want to pursue that particular avenue or not, right? Well, the best way to do it is to get into it and give it a whirl and get inside the doors of this different world, right? So that's what I decided to do. To me, it's not about go-getting. To me, it's more about logic.
Once David was in, he set really high goals for himself. He really wanted to focus on doing features. He wanted to work for 60 minutes. He found a love for telling in-depth stories, exposing lies, and finding the truth. He really loved the career that he chose.
Because no 2 days are the same. That's the best part about this industry, right? Even if you're covering the Raptors, right? No 2 days are the same. Even if you're covering city council, no 2 days are the same. Police, everything, no 2 days are the same. And the other thing that I really liked was I got the ability to get out of the office. I wasn't sitting behind a desk all day long. You know, that provides a certain amount of freedom, also responsibility, because you're not being checked by your boss every single second of what you're doing and how you're progressing and what's going on. You have a certain story that's due or a certain assignment that's due. It's due when it's due, and get it done.
David's passion wasn't sports, it was storytelling. So when he got into sports, he was a little worried that his lack of encyclopedic knowledge would limit him from hitting the heights that other reporters might get to.
And there was a point in time where it would actually be intimidating to an extent to even attempt to get into a philosophical discussion about that sport and the players who play it, because you would feel like, the way Fred Flintstone, when he kind of shrinks when he feels really, really silly, oh, I know that feeling.
But David said he never felt like he made a mistake getting into journalism. It's because he could do the job very well. He often studied game notes and came in the previous day to practice in order to perfect his professionalism. But after a decade of being a sports reporter, David started to notice that not everyone was up to standard. Between interns that were about to go professional and were just not ready, and other sports reporters who didn't look or sound professional in scrums, Lanys decided to take sports reporting to the next level and open the College of Sports Media, which, after a couple years of grueling work, getting approved for loans and to become an official school, he was finally able to open the doors to the college, and it was an instant hit.
We were lined up out the door. We had about 60 or 70 people come to that very first open house, and I'll never forget Jim's wife, Mel. She looked at me and she goes, "David, you have a winner here. This is a winner." And I said, "Well, how do you know?" She said, "Look at the lineup. It hasn't even started yet. Look at the lineup. It's 60 deep out the door around the side of the building, people who want to come in and register."
I asked David at various parts of the interview about if at any point his fandom of sports crossed into an obsession. It didn't happen. But he almost became obsessed with his business, teaching sports broadcasting. He has so much on his plate at the end of his days, he says he can never finish everything he needs to do. Though he says that it's all worth it when he sees his former and prepared students succeed in the workforce.
The general student has never done this before they walked in. They walked in here. So to see it go from super green as far as everything, right, to, and I'm talking how to write a lead, how to put a lineup together, I mean the most basic of stuff, to being, 3 years, 4 years later, covering major sporting events, traveling, working for major outlets. That's why the school's here.
Beyond teaching, marketing, and running a school, David also has to do all the miscellaneous stuff. That includes student issues and hiring a plumber. But the challenge is, he says it's fun. That day-to-day pressure, it still invigorates him, just like it did 20 years ago.
I still feel young. My body is telling me otherwise at times, but I still mentally feel young. And I think part of that is because I deal with young people all the time, right? Not to mention my 2 children who are younger, right? So I'm forced in a lot of ways to stay young. As far as personality and sense of humor and that kind of stuff, I don't think I'm any different than I was 20 years ago. I guess a little bit more responsible and a little bit more mature and a little bit more adult. As you grow, obviously you have to exhibit those skills and behaviors. But at the same time, still have the ability to be silly and ridiculous at times, and because there's more pressures in life, in work, that you don't ask for, that will end up being on your plate anyway, right? And you have no choice but to deal with them. So you may as well enjoy the stuff that you voluntarily add to that plate, right? Why not, right? I mean, listen, we sit here and deal with sports all day long, none of which is life and death. Sports is not life and death, right? But it's important to people. The people who follow them, it's important, and I get that. But we also have to put perspective into things. And I think if anything, the last 20 years has changed me, it's probably perspective and the ability to have that.
David says his next priority is his kids, instilling habits into his 2 young children, and maintaining a good home. As for the college, he is always thinking about expanding programs and the school space itself. Over 80% of the college graduates have been employed in the industry. Many who are actually faces on networks across the nation. David Lanys has clearly made his mark on the sports broadcasting landscape. So, there was only one thing left to ask him. What is the meaning of life?
I think that my definition of what the meaning of life would be different than yours, and different than that person, and the person, and everybody. For me, what it is, I think, is the ability to find your happiness. What makes you passionate about living, coming to work, going home. You want to walk in the door of your house at the end of the day, no matter how big or how small your home is, and say, good day. Now what am I going to do with the night? And that could easily be just chilling on a couch and hanging out, watching Monday Night Football, right? If that makes you happy, right, do it. Obviously, you can't do that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, forever, right? But it's about finding the balance that makes you happy.
Sports are engraved into our very nature. Sunday Night Football, the Roman games, and wrestling that we can date back over 15,000 years. It would be reasonable to make your whole life about them. But being a broadcaster doesn't mean you have to be obsessed with them. It's the workflow, the deadlines, pressure to improve, to provide us with the important distraction we need from the equally important real-world issues. But that's just my perspective. What do you guys think? And tell me what sporting moment has impacted you the most. For now, I'm going to leave you with one more moment that impacted David's life as a sports broadcaster.
I was really happy to do it, but also terrified for my life when I covered Vince Carter's first game with the New Jersey Nets in Detroit. And Detroit is a nasty sports town. I mean, they are rabid fans. And when you are sitting courtside at basketball, your back is towards everybody. And some of the things I heard, and the few times I was brave enough to actually turn around and look and saw, scared the bejesus out of me.
Play fourth quarter, Nets up by 1. Carter, bank shot is good.
I think he just cleared some space and sent Hamilton flying.